And as her spouse, he did not see those things.
But you have to remember, okay, I'm gonna let you finish first.
And what got me also is that he was honest enough to say that he was trying to do for her what he felt his father should have done for his mother.
Yes.
And that Willow said, "Isn't it sad that Dad has this perfect family in his mind, but it's not us?"
Mm-hmm.
So I think that we don't take into account how men are impacted by domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
As a child, a male child who witnessed domestic violence, Will had this ideal life planned out.
Yes.
He knew that he did not want to be anything like his father. Unfortunately, though he may not have been physically abusing his wife, that psychological power and control was there. Then she talked about getting pregnant and knowing within 4 seconds after the act of conception that she was pregnant, and she cried all night and he laughed. And I didn't find that funny, but I don't think it was intentional. I don't think that he was a monstrous person out to hurt her. But I think that a lot of times men are also groomed to act and think and move a certain way without regard for how those actions impact the women they choose to love.
Girl,
come on now.
She preaching, because even in if you take a step back and look at it, Orange number 45, he doesn't realize how everything he says that he does is affecting his marriage. And you notice she started out to like, do not touch me at all. And it's like, when do you learn and when do you listen? Luckily for Will, he started getting the hint. Like, I don't want to, because I don't ever want anybody to think that because someone is toxic, there's no opportunity for change.
Right.
But I want everyone to understand that you're not in control of that person. You're only in control of yourself. So when you start to work on you and getting yourself together, either they're going to get on board or they're going to dismiss themselves.
Absolutely.
And he had to. Because she had got to the point where it's like, I can't do this no more.
Right.
I let you build my life for long enough. Can't build my life for
And they said that the breaking point was her 40th birthday. So she got married at 26. That's 14 years of her life.
But think about it. What did her mother say?
Her mother at
I
the
didn't
end,
see anything wrong.
And then you have to think about the fact that her mother is a completely different generation. Her mother was also in an abusive relationship. So as somebody who's experienced an abusive relationship, even though she might be healed on the outside and distanced from that person,
And Jada
her
witnessed
mentality
that.
might not be healed.
And Jada witnessed that. So Jada's like, let me not rock the boat.
Right.
Everybody in the world wants what I got.
Right.
I mean, and the reality was, like he said, I was winning for the world. But in my marriage, I was losing.
And that goes back to that psychological abuse, because you kind of convince yourself with outside perception that there's something wrong with me if I don't want this. He's built me this house. I don't want this house. We have all these children together. She didn't necessarily say it, but she kind of alluded to the fact that she was not prepared for motherhood at the time she became a mother. That was not something she was interested in that moment. And that happens for many women. So when I was having that discussion with the people in the group chat, they said, I could see myself being Jada in that moment and crying like, oh my goodness, I wanted my life to go one way. Now I'm pregnant. Now I'm stuck with this guy. I might like him for right now, but I might not have seen myself with him forever. But now I'm stuck with this guy. And what really bothered me that her mother said at the end was that once Will acknowledged that she finally created the joy herself that he had been trying to give her, her mother jumps in and says, I knew he was the best thing that happened to you. And I'm like, man, you don't get it. He's saying, oh, she built her own happiness. I'm happy for her. I did all of this for me, trying to make her happy, or what I thought was going to make her happy because it was going to make me feel good to make her happy. But she created that happiness on her own. And her mother attributes that back to him still. And I was like, wow, that's very interesting.
But I was thinking too, the mother is a byproduct of their wealth, and so I'm thinking she could be looking at this personally for herself.
I was thinking that too when I think about, okay, so I love these two to death, but Remy and Papoose, and how Remy mother fawns all over Papoose.
I'm not.
Well, she's like, okay, so Remy, we know Remy's pregnant, but you're my mother and you make my husband's plate before you make your pregnant daughter's plate, that's fawning all over someone.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, why is she like that? Because Papoose provides everything she needs.
Mm-hmm.
You're completely dismissing your child.
Mm-hmm.
You completely dismiss your child because of everything she needs. And then I thought, well, maybe she's looking at it like just devil's advocate. Had you not put her through all of this, she would have never said, you know what? No.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No. Enough. So thank you for that. But then I think back to, because I forgot all about the fact that she had a farm, a whole farm. So she didn't need you for anything.
Right.
And a lot of
I
the
didn't even
times,
know about that phone.
That
me
was
either.
in the
Nobody
first
would
part.
ever nobody would ever tell you about that type of stuff. Like all you ever heard of was the stuff that the blogs wanted you to know.
And not
Like
only
they were
that,
a part of Scientology. Come to find out they never were. And like all of that stuff. It's like,
that's something that wasn't necessarily public knowledge, you
Because
know,
she was
because
leaving.
she never made it to the farm.
Mhm.
She purchased the farm, and
Wonder
before
what
she
she
got to
did.
spend one night in it, she wound up with him,
Oh,
and then pregnant,
That-
and then married, and then had another
Mhm.
kid.
Mhm.
Career on hold.
Mhm.
that attests to
Yeah.
your belief in yourself as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because if she'd have said, you know,
Mm-hmm.
who you dating right now? Nobody. You dating me. If she'd have said, wait a minute, what?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And let him know, well, we don't play this game this way. You have to do it my way.
Right, and I
Then
think that attests
maybe-
back to that whole vulnerability she was in that moment
Mhm.
after like they didn't mention that part, but I did the timeline. I'm like, no, see, it was
And
something
see,
missing
I won't
Something
even
missing.
put everything because they don't touch. She don't really touch her relationship with Pop.
Not anymore. She used to. Not anymore, and I think with memes. And all
I would
that,
have to look it up because I don't think she would
had-
always just recognize him as a good friend
No,
and
she
that
talked
they had a
about
good
how
relationship.
She was not in a good space after losing him, and because they shared letters that he had written her and things of that nature. But they showed like one meme before the Red Table Talks even existed, where they were alluding to Will Smith killed Tupac, type, as a joke.
Oh,
So that was
okay.
definitely just a joke. But when you think about it, timeline wise,
Uh-huh.
That's a
it's
little
funny joke.
too close, joke. That's a little
funny
too
joke.
close.
Now
You know.
you finna joke.
Yeah.
That's a little too close. That's a little too close.
Mm-hmm.
So one of
Wow.
the things that I put on the form is if you knew a friend was in an abusive relationship, how would you respond?
Yeah,
You want my turnaround hat or my somebody on it?
Well, that let Sandy go because she wrote her answer out.
Oh.
Well, one I wrote domestic violence hotline, but then the other is, that it's not your fault. So, because I don't really, and I've had friends, I've been in a domestic violence relationship, I've had friends that have been in one, and I just came from a friend perspective. It wasn't really knowing what to say.
Mm-hmm.
It was more knowing this person, knowing my friend that I've known since third grade.
Mm-hmm.
And, was in this particular situation, it was, she and I had been best friends for years. And I get married. She now discovers that I'm in an abusive relationship. She's at the height of her career. Her career is taking off. And she just drops from the face of the earth. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? And it wasn't a physical domestic violence. It was psychological.
Mm-hmm.
But I am sharing and I'm pouring out to her. And then she just drops off the face of the earth. And I'm like, now what? Now what do I
Because she
do?
didn't know how to handle it.
Because she didn't know how to handle it. Exactly. But yet, she's gone for 20 years, and I go through what I go through, and I'm coming out on the other side. And she calls me one day, and she's like, "Hey, girl, how you doing?" Like we talked last week. "Hey, girl, how you doing?" And I said, "Hey." I said, "What's going on?" She said, "Oh, you know what? I was just thinking about you, and yada, 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 yada." And she's talking, and we get together. And after about the third meeting, I thought, you know what, I can't do this. And I was like, and I am not going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And so after the third meeting, I said to her, I said, there's a 20-year gap here that needs to be filled in. I said, and you called me like we just talked last week.
Right.
And I said, and until we can fill this space, we can't move forward with this.
Right.
And she was like, I can't believe, girl, you ought to be grateful that I know Jesus. And because, you know, you had said
She
this
don't
to
know
me,
Jesus.
if you had said this to me X number of years ago, girl, I would have gone off. And I said, Jesus and I said, I know Sandy. I said, and because I know Sandy, here's the deal. I said, because the Sandy that you knew back then is not the Sandy of today. I said, and unless you can get with this program, I'm all right with going another 20 years because you've been gone for 20. So put another 20 on it, girl. I'm good. Well, what it came down to was she was now in an abusive relationship. So the very things that she thought about me in my relationship, and as crazy as my ex was, her ex was even crazier. And so now it's like, how can I, with this congressionally appointed position, how can I expose to the world
That I'm going through this.
that I'm going through this?
And those be the ones.
That's right.
Because
And who can I
turnaround
talk
helps
to about
judges.
And that's
Yeah.
what I'm
Police
talking about with the
officers.
big little
With
lies.
those
And I'm
big
glad
little
you because a lot of people are embarrassed.
Yes.
And then they feel like people won't believe them. Now I gave, pop culture references, what I think is popular, but my mother watched Lifetime all day on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And as a child, I used to watch Lifetime with my mother all day on Sunday. And there's one movie, I can't recall the name of it at the moment.
I know it was.
The police officer killed 5 wives. 5 wives! Killed 5 of his wives before going to jail. And that's when you get into relationships with people who are in power positions, because men get abused as well. And a lot of times they don't say anything because of embarrassment. But then you who do you turn to when it's the police beating on you? Because
Who do you turn to when your husband's the governor?
Right.
Who do you turn to
That's
when
right.
your husband's the judge?
That's
Who do you
right.
turn to when your wife is the mayor? Like,
Right.
who do you, I'm not saying,
That's right.
I'm not saying that, I'm just saying, like, who do
Just
you
examples.
turn
That's
to
right.
when these are the top people in the world?
Yes.
Who do Melania turn to? Really?
That's right.
And
That's
that
right.
goes back to,
That's
know,
right.
Who she go to?
Who she
with
go
the
to.
whole Bill Cosby situation, and what Trevor Noah said was, just because somebody was good to you doesn't mean they weren't horrible to somebody else.
That's
and that
right.
was with the Brett Kavanaugh, the judge,
That's right.
that type of stuff.
That's right.
Just because they were good to you doesn't mean
That's
they were
right.
not horrible to somebody else.
And you don't know who that person was 30, 40 years
Hold
ago.
on.
You don't know what that person did all that time and had to reap to change to be who they are now. So
And how many times do you find where you have all these serial killers out here that have killed people for 20 years,
and then you get
and the
caught
neighbors
over something.
say, "Oh, he was so
pillars
nice."
in the community? You know, oh yeah.
That's
we should
usually
keep
the
it at
rapist.
church. That's right.
Just like with all of the Catholic Church and the priests,
That's
all
right.
types of things.
That's
you know,
right.
It's a lot of times
That's
the
right.
person you least expect, the person who
The
is highly
person that's
regarded.
just
The kindergartners are taught trust the police, trust
That's
the
right.
firemen, trust the clergy.
That's
well, we teach our kindergartners at Turnaround when we go talk to our kindergartners to make sure that you have 5 people you can go to, so that you have 5 different people to tell if one person doesn't. You got to have more than one
That's
person
good.
to talk to. And the number one thing that we didn't say when I help a friend is believe them. I believe you.
Yes. Yes.
Because the most hurtful thing, the most frustrating thing, I'm getting into this field. I got in this field because I'm a survivor. But when you're married to somebody that just don't get it, that just don't get it,
Yes.
it's like, well, they could have did this and they could have did that, and so you have to break it down to them like, you sit down and have a conversation with a stranger about your most embarrassing sexual moment. Go. Let's see you do it with no problem, without hesitating or flinching when they ask you questions, without batting an eye or being scared, without forgetting anything word for word, verbatim, in order. Let's see you do that. And the most hurtful thing for a survivor to hear is, he didn't do that.
He didn't do that.
They didn't do that.
You right about that.
It wasn't him. I'm dealing with that now. It wasn't them.
That makes me
And
think of
family are the number one
Kay
reason.
No, I
Michelle,
was just getting ready to say.
when she was
family.
dealing with Toya Wright's ex-husband.
And it's funny
And,
because
you know,
years
Kay
later,
Michelle was like, girl, don't touch that. This, that, and the third happened to me. And Toya said, no, that ain't the person I know. And then she married this person. And then that person showed up.
Everybody and their mother. Everybody told K. Michelle she was lying. And even the world told K. Michelle she was lying until Toya Wright and them went to marriage boot camp. You seen him on marriage boot camp?
No, I did not see it, but I
YouTube it. It's on YouTube. He zaps out. The only reason he don't touch her is because there's cameras all over that house.
I did see that.
He zaps out. He throws. Throwing is the number one sign of abuse.
No.
He throws flowers. A vase of flowers. I'll never forget. And tell her, you gonna shut up while I'm talking. Oh yeah, you beat K. Michelle down. I believe that, brother.
No, yeah.
Oh, you hurt her good.
Like you said, believe it.
And even if you don't agree,
that's right.
Don't take that, because some things we just don't know.
That's right.
Sometimes I got a mouth, and I can make you really want to slap me. But that doesn't mean it's okay for you to slap me.
Right.
And in that instance, and being a good friend, even if, so the person who inspired me to do all of this work 4 years ago, I was never there when it was happening to them. I caught the aftermath once. You know, they put their hands on them when they were pregnant, and the person we mutually know said, you know, I'm gonna drop them off to you since you in town. Maybe you could, you know, provide some type of comfort. And we didn't talk about it. I asked because I didn't know if the person that brought them to me shared that they told me already. Didn't mention it at all. If they want to talk to me about it, I'm open to listening.
You're great.
We just never got there.
Yeah.
You know, they spent the night, a couple nights before they decided they was ready to go back, and you know, I said okay. If the baby was born, I go to the hospital. The baby is asleep, flinching. I was like, oh wow, that baby was born with trauma. Like, you know, just traumatized at hearing that person's voice in the room. So oh wow, you know, so. They stayed in the relationship, I want to say, maybe at least until the baby's second birthday, because I had gone to the birthday party, and they were there, and they helped me put the baby in my car, you know. So none of that person showed up in my presence ever. I said, I wonder if it's me. I wonder if they know not to act up in front of me because they don't know how I'm gonna respond. Because I never saw them as that person, and I made it very clear that I'm here for this person. You know, I'm gonna do whatever I need to do. I'm not gonna tick you off because you're not gonna hit me and get away with it. You know, they might not want to press charges. I will. I'm gonna hit you back, and then I'm gonna press charges. Right. But I just never saw that person in those moments. I never saw that person in those moments, but I believed them because I saw the aftermath. I showed up. Something said, they're not answering you. Go to them. Just go. Go show up. I show up. They panic. They open the door. Oh, it's you. What's going on? I see the chaos. The child is screaming in their sleep, screaming. We struggle to wake the child up to let them know that they're safe. To let them know, wake up, look around you. You're safe right now. There's nothing going on. So a lot of times people don't believe you because they never see that person in that way. I had no experience with their abuser outside of my relationship with them. So I had no reason to believe this person was making this stuff up. And because I kept asking them questions, you know, I know this person comes from a home where their parents were no longer together. Their one parent, their primary guardian, was in a new relationship, long-term, still in that relationship. But I didn't know what that relationship was like. The primary guardian was not the connection that I had to them. So I was curious, was that parent, you know, experiencing abuse in the home? The siblings, they said, nah, we don't know why they tolerating this. This is not what we grew up witnessing. So this is something that's happening to them. We don't know what's up. So I said, okay, well, what's up with you? Well, I want for my child what I couldn't have. I want my child to have both parents in the home. This is how you want it though? Because you do realize your child's gonna learn either A, to accept what you're accepting, or B, you're gonna become their punching bag as well. And eventually, you know, they decided, nah, I don't want this anymore. We can just co-parent. And so far, it's working out for them. They have not, in my knowledge, returned to that relationship, but they do allow that child access to their other parent just with boundaries now.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, it's a very real thing to believe someone. And I remember when I showed up in that moment, I just texted my mother and I said, "Hey, I'm gonna stay here tonight. I'll tell you about it tomorrow." She said, "Okay."
And that's the number. Sometimes sometimes you said you didn't talk about it. When we teach how to help a friend, a lot of the times it's not to have the conversation right then. Sometimes that friend just needs to think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that friend needs to know, look, regardless, you got my back. And that's all I need to know at this moment. They probably got 1,800 million things going on in their mind. If I leave them right now, where am I going? Well, who's going to watch the baby?
Right.
And so it's like the number one thing you can do is believe them and be there. And if you cannot be there, offer. Look, here go a number. Just keep this in your house. I got the hotline on it, and if you're ready to talk to somebody, because I don't know what to do. And it's okay to say you don't know. A lot of the times people think you can fix their problems when you start to give a little bit of resolution.
Right.
And you gonna fix it. How is that helping them? It come a point in time where they gotta fix it, right?
Absolutely.
So it's like the number one thing we say is I believe you, and be there for them and listen to them, and always like offer some form of support, even if you can't be that support.
Right. And I think what's important with what you said, because I shared that if it was me, I would file a police report. That's because I didn't have any attachment to that person.
Right.
In that moment, they were thinking about, if I file a police report, how does that impact my child? If I put my child's father in the system, how does that impact my child? You know, they had a whole different level of thoughts going on.
Thinking all of that and then some in that 10 seconds. And
you know, one thing that I did was, when formulating a response to why they weren't going to be at work the following morning, I asked them, I don't want to call you a victim if that's not what you feel like. This is what I wrote out. Do you want me to change anything? Because I don't want to call you a victim if that's not what you feel like. And a lot of people felt like, oh, they're dumb. Oh, well, they don't want help. Oh, I would have filed a police report. If you don't file a police report, you're not serious.
And the worst thing you have to do, that's the worst thing you can do, because you're pushing them back.
You're pushing it, yeah.
So the best thing you can do is, what would you like to do?
That's
And
right.
what would you like to do? Maybe like, I'm ready to go home. And you may not understand that.
Right, exactly.
But that's what they are physically, mentally, emotionally prepared to do.
Yeah.
So all we can do is, all right, so let's create this safety plan. And if this, then what? If that, then what?
Yeah.
If you go back and he hits you this time and you're not ready to go, what's the safest position you can get in? And people don't want to think that, because what's the first thing you're going to think if your daughter called you talking about her boyfriend hitting her? Your face said it all. I'm on my way. I'm on my way. And then what's your thought when your daughter stays with him after you don't stomp the mud hole in him for stomping the mud hole in your daughter? What's your first thought? So it's like, but you took her power from her by going and beating his behind.
That's right.
You didn't give her no room to say, Mommy, that's not what I want.
Right.
This is what I want to do. Mommy, just take me out of here tonight.
Because we layer over our common sense, you know, outside of that situation. And we layer that over their thoughts and their thinking and their power.
And they don't even have it.
And like you said.
But you talk about power and control. They have lost all their power to the abuser. So when you come in thinking you saving them, you're taking more power from them.
Yes.
And I'm glad you brought it up, because we have the power and control where it talks about physical violence and sexual violence and coercion and threats, intimidation, and everything in between. And when you talk about, you know, trying to protect somebody, you know, one thing that's on the power and control wheel says male privilege. Treating her like a servant, making all the big decisions, acting like the master of the castle, being the one to define men's and women's roles. And I think that when I was talking about the color purple, that's what stood out to me, because that's just how the times were. Women were property. She was given to that man as a spouse in exchange for financial gain for the stepfather. She knew that it was her job to come into that home and clean and cook and help rear those children. She did not have an identity outside of that before she entered that home. So
That's
she
what
didn't
she did
really,
then.
you know, that was male privilege, that's patriarchy, and we are living in a different time where people are challenging patriarchy. But that doesn't mean that those ideals have gone anywhere. That brings me back to the whole Will and Jada situation. A lot of people didn't see anything wrong with that because patriarchy says that's fine. You know, and we're brought up under that umbrella of patriarchy, and we're just now seeing what it looks like to challenge that, and we're peeling back those layers. It's like, and then the another one that says using children, making her feel guilty about the children, using the children to relay messages, using visitation to harass her, threatening to take the children away. What's love got to do with it? She tried to take her kids and go, and then he showed up, and she went to use the bathroom, and the next thing you know, the kids is getting in the limo with him because he called her mother. And just like Jada's mother thought that the best thing that happened to her was Will, Tina's mother thought the best thing that happened to her was Ike. Like you said, a byproduct of their wealth. So she was like, oh, nah, sis, you're not coming here to my house with all them kids and losing his money. And she told him where to find her.
But that also goes back to thought process. Because wasn't her mother abused too?
I can't recall, but maybe.
I
I
think
know in the
her mother was
beginning in
abused, I
the
think.
movie, she was living with the grandparents for that reason. Yeah.
So it attests to, you were talking about
It's cyclical sometimes.
power and control. The Tyler Perry family reunion. The mother was offering up her children to these men in order for financial
Game.
gain. So she was sexually, emotionally, and mentally abusing. She wasn't herself, but she was putting her kids in these positions for her financial gain. That's wild.
Absolutely.
And I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of times